Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the part of the evening that I said earlier you have all gathered and waited for tonight. I'm going to introduce onto stage our main guest of the evening. Dr. Motsepe, don't look so nervous. You're only in for a grilling. I hope you're ready for the hot seat. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Patrice Motsepe on stage.
A very good evening to everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation, that is to SANEF, for asking me to form part of this conversation this evening. It is indeed an honor for me to be doing this. 14 years ago, I had a tough job of having to ask this gentleman next to me to agree to do an interview. We were about to launch the Africa edition of Forbes magazine. He gave me a real tough time from deciding whether or not to agree to the interview, to how it was going to be done, and how we're going to invade Dr. Precious's house for hours on end, ransack their wardrobes for the photo shoot. But in the end, of course, it did happen. But I hear that you didn't give SANEF such a tough time as you gave me.
They do excellent work, so we have to support them. The profession is enormously important.
Dr. Precious asked me while we were having starters as to whether not just to whether, to not grill you, but to hlonipha.
To do what?
To hlonipha.
Uhlonipha?
Yes.
Angazi ukuthi uhlonipha yini phela. I know it when it comes to older people and elders, but it's an opportunity for you to reciprocate, because you said that there were challenges when this interview took place.
Yeah, so now I have to, it's payback time. Anyway, tonight's chat is going to be short and sweet, unlike the hours on end we spent back 14 years ago. It's been agreed that Dr. Motsepe won't give a speech, but we're going to have this interaction. But that said, I am going to ask you to make some remarks before we then get to the actual Q&A.
Yeah, when people speak, it's easily to get bored, so I thought that rather than make a few remarks, we must have this engagement. I mean, I was in Boston yesterday at Harvard University. They've got what is called the Global Advisory Council, some of the smartest, brightest people from all over the world. For me, it's a learning experience. There are various meetings where I go and you listen to people who've been successful and challenges all over the world. And some of the countries that have done very well, you get ideas in terms of what we can try at home. But tonight I'll be going with Lux, we'll be going to Egypt. So we arrived yesterday from Boston, and tonight we're going to Egypt to hand over the trophy for the Super Cup. I saw the chairman of Mamelodi Sundowns, and if he had won, of course, as president, as president of CAF, I love Kaizer Chiefs.
You do?
I love Orlando Pirates. Orlando Pirates was my father's club, I was born in Orlando, opposite Orlando High. So, and then of course there's a club from Mamelodi that the family loves. And having said that, we love all football clubs. But let me tell you something important, because when they asked me why did I agree to be president of CAF when I don't even attend meetings of the governors board in South Africa, I think it was twofold. The first is they told me that it was going to take less than 5% of my time. I may as well have believed in Father Christmas, because there's no way it was going to land 5% of my time. But the key issue as well is, if you make a commitment, you have to be absolutely clear that there's going to be a significant improvement, a significant change. If you cannot make that undertaking, then I get all sorts of proposals, and I'm very, very pleased, and I'm very proud, and there's a lot of credit that people give me for the successes of CAF, and with all respect, the credit should go to the 54 presidents on the continent, the staff, and these are the people that work very hard. I know Lux complains. I phone him 3 o'clock in the morning, and he cannot say to me, "You don't pay me enough to phone me 3 o'clock in the morning." But also it was an opportunity for me to learn more about the continent, because South Africa and Africa will never realize their true potential if we don't work together. We have to work together, trade together, educate our people on our continents. And the illegal migration everywhere in the world is something that is a matter of serious concern. But in the African continent, it makes huge commercial sense. It's good for our people. It's how we create jobs. If you look at the EU, for example, Germany doesn't interact with the world on its own. Fourth largest economy in the world, third or fourth largest economy in the world. France doesn't interact or trade or negotiate with the rest of the world on its own, neither does Italy. So South Africa has to engage in trade negotiations. We don't have the leverage. So it was an opportunity to learn. Of course, we love football. See what it is that brings us together, that could unite the continent, because that's a critical part of the future. But and then, of course, I thought I was going to have one term. And last year, I thought my period had come to an end, and I announced that I was going to step down, and the sponsors said, "If you leave, we're going to leave with you." And the big problem was, we'd made such enormous progress, and we had a critical stage. I'm very, very happy, very proud. African football will never be the same again. And thanks to the cooperation. And football is more than what happens on the field of play. A young boy, a young girl looks at a football player who succeeds, gets motivated. I want to become a doctor. I want to become I was a lawyer in my previous life, so let me not say lawyer, a technologist, whatever you want to become. The success of a young boy or a young girl on the football pitch is a means of huge motivation. But you've got more exciting questions to ask me. Let's proceed so that...
Well, speaking from some of what you said in the latter part of your remarks now, were you surprised, though, that people didn't want you to leave, given how within such a very short space of time, you were able to take a struggling organization financially, some of whose leaders were accused of some unsavory things, and within 5 years, you've made it profitable, and as you just said now, you don't think it'll ever go back to where it once was.
Well, it takes a lot of hard work, with a lot of pressure on your family. I almost said my poor wife, but let me rather say my dear wife. And poor in the sense that she's got to put up with all of the the long hours, and sometimes she travels with me, and I can see she's tired, but she's there to try and support. But it's critically important that if you undertake to do anything, it's going to take a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of focus, a clear understanding of what the objectives are, what has to be achieved. And you've got to call the people who've been involved in behavior and conduct in the past, where questions of governance and legality and ethics were not adhered to. You've got to call them behind closed doors and tell them, now, let's understand what's going to happen. But you also have to make them understand that it's beneficial for them, it's good for them. This new dispensation will benefit them enormously. And again, it takes a lot of hard work. But again, I'm enormously proud. No leader succeeds on his own. No leader succeeds on his own. A leader is only as good or as bright or as effective as the people around him. And always surround yourself with people who are smarter, brighter, and create a culture where they can disagree with you. And sometimes, in a very polite way, privately say to you that what you've been advised and some of the thoughts are not what is appropriate. But you've got to feel something. I mean, all of us, you've got to, whatever you do, make sure that you love it, you enjoy it, you've got a passion for what you're doing. But I guess all of us, I remember when you asked me, when you interviewed me for Forbes, one of the things I sought to emphasize is the important thing for me and the family is not where is the next 10 million rand or where is the next 50 million rand. Because when people assess or evaluate what your contribution has been in society, they don't say he was a wealthy person or a successful person. The key is, what contributions have you made to make your communities, your society, your country a better place? And that's very, very important for us.
But for many people, I mean, we often hear people saying the continent is very tricky and difficult to navigate. I mean, you have to navigate your infrastructure issues, complex political systems across the continent. We have the infrastructure challenges that we know only too well. How easy or difficult was it for you to actually be able to do what you have been able to do over the past 5 years, given such complexities?
I've visited 45 countries on the African continent. Enormously inspiring, enormously educational, and very complicated. When you engage with football people or heads of state, or even in countries, there will always be challenges, and there'll always be problems, and sometimes what appears to be insurmountable problems. I remember when the elections took place, there was a lot of complaint that apparently in the past there were brown envelopes, I'm talking past. There were brown envelopes, and the rumor was, here comes this rich man, and the message is very clear. Issues of ethics and governance and legality are non-negotiable. But we're all judged by our results. I mean, even in South Africa, there's all of the best of plans, the best of intentions, and sometimes we're eloquent in terms of discussing, and in the context of the African continent, what needs to be done. Zero tolerance for corruption, zero tolerance for lack of governance, zero tolerance for lack of transparency. Critically important. But you've got to implement that every day, adhere to it, enforce it, make it consistent, And people realize over time that the way that things were done in the past, which was irregular and unethical and improper, is not in their interest. So I'm happy that one of the things we also wanted to do was the emphasis of legality, the emphasis of governance, and also the emphasis of making sure that there's a sense of ownership. You know, if you've got governance in football, we were clear in our minds it would transcend into governance in government. If you've got zero tolerance of corruption in football, it will transcend and translate into a culture of zero tolerance in government. So it was absolutely clear to us that what we are doing in football would have an impact on the freedom of speech, the democracies. I mean, I was amazed when I was told privately that I must tell the people who to vote for. I said, you know, you are the president. We want a new chairman for the referees committee. You tell us who must go. And then, of course, there's a South African who's very good, but it would be improper. And then they would come to me and say, go for Victor Gomez. I said, but, you know, he's clearly one of the very best, but it would appear that I am doing what has happened in the past. So I would say to them, you choose, and you come and tell me, because they must take ownership. But anyway, I don't want to bore you too much about football.
Yes, but not everyone is driven by those kinds of values. And the same happens here in our country, whether you're talking business or you're talking politics. Right? People get into organizations for a whole variety of reasons. Not everyone is driven by the passion to do good. Other people are in there for themselves, and I'm sure you've experienced.
Yeah, but you've got to be careful, eh? All over the world, people are into, they start a business for what they can get out of the business. They go to university. I mean, my mother used to tell me, if you don't get educated, at the time she said, the girls won't even look at you. Of course, I got the best girl here. The girls won't even look at you. So you've got to, you know, you've got to make sure that in every regard, in every respect, you know, in relation to the values, give people a reason why they will benefit from what you're doing. I was telling some of the people earlier, you know, Dr. Precious and I, we've got what we call 26 development forums throughout the country. Go to Mthatha, go to Gqeberha, go to Buffalo City, but the same applies throughout the country. And some young people came to me and said, I want to start a foundation. I want to create jobs, and I want to improve the living conditions of the people in my society, but I want you to fund the foundation. So I said, that's fine, I'll look at that. And then she says to me, or he says to me, this foundation will also be an employment for me. You cannot really do significantly contribute to society if you yourself are not in a position where your primary responsibility, which is your family, your wife and children, are financially independent. So when people go and do things for what they can get out of it for themselves, it's fine. As long as they recognize that they've got to do that in a manner that it's compliance with the law, it's in compliance with legality and ethics. And as time goes on, you cannot be part of a country where only the rich and the wealthy do well. It's not sustainable. So it's in the best interest of the rich and wealthy. I mean, we have to take smart business decisions all the time. One of the smartest decisions we can take as business people and as a country, but particularly the successful, is to educate our youth and those who are from societies and communities that are marginalized and excluded. Give them a hope, give them a future. In that way, you create a future for all of us.
And that's exactly where I want us to go. But before we do that, there's a couple of things just to end the football part of this conversation, especially in the context of this past week's events. You now have 9 African nations who are your baby, who are your family, that have to go to the World Cup. All manner of fears have actually been expressed. Among them, whether these teams or their nations are going to be able to take these teams to the World Cup, whether they will have sufficient funds to actually go to the World Cup. Do you have or harbor such fears? But not only that, but also going to what some people regard as like hostile territory, especially in the US. You know, whether you have such fears.
The World Cup is not in Europe, eh? It's in America.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And America is very friendly.
In the United States. Or is it?
Well, you know, we were in Kenya, and I was with Gianni Infantino. I don't know whether BBK is here. And he asked a question that was enormously popular, whether the African fans and supporters and spectators will be welcome in America, because there are all of these challenges with visas and whether, you know, the entry into America.
Even the teams, the amounts of money that they will have to.
Yeah. Well, money, I can assure you, there's huge progress. You know, you've got to make football commercially viable. You've got to make football appealing. We watch so much European football because all over the world, they love European football. We've got to get African football to the same level. We've got the talent, enormous talent. So we've got to make young people on the continent. 180 nations watched the AFCON in Ivory Coast. Africa has got 54 nations. There's another 126 nations outside the continent who are watching football on the African continent because it's exciting, it's appealing. I mean, I used to watch Kaizer Chiefs because I still watch Kaizer Chiefs. They play beautiful football. Panyaza says, I mustn't forget Morocco Swallows. I also watch Morocco Swallows. You know, Andries Maseko, Ace Mnini, Father Mposho. I mean, all of those. And then, of course, Orlando Pirates, I have no choice. I've got to watch it as well because it's my father's club. The one from Mamelodi, I don't watch them a lot, but I hope that all of them do well. So, but it's very, you know, at the heart of sustainability is profitability. Because, you know, this thing that club owners must always pay for clubs out of their own pocket. We've got to make sure that, you know, we get, you're talking about the clubs, the national teams that go to America. There's a significant amount of money that's been made available to them to transport them to the US, and there's 9 clubs. We did something even more exciting on the continent, and more exciting because we paid $13 million for the first time, gave 130 clubs in Africa, each of them 100,000, so that they can travel and participate in the football competition. So there will be enough resources for those clubs to go to America, but you must also understand that some governments support their national teams. They fly them around in aeroplanes, they employ the coaches, and some are not in that position. But the partnership between government and the private sector, and to make sure that, you know, I think somebody was talking about nations that play football outside their national teams. Can you imagine if Bafana Bafana could not play in South Africa? I mean, how do you develop football in South Africa if Bafana Bafana cannot play in front of their supporters? So I'm confident that the African clubs will do well, the national teams. We've got a team for the first time for the first time that went to, that were in the semi-finals of the World Cup. I'll be going to Chile on Sunday to watch a team from Africa, from Morocco. They are playing the finals against Argentina. And Bafana and Amajita were also involved in, they were also in Chile. And of course, again, as a president of CAF, I've got to support all of the national teams, but when some teams that I like score goals, I've got to remember to sit down and not jump.
Just lastly, I mean, closer to home, it would seem a storm is brewing. You have
A storm is brewing.
Sports minister who has written to FIFA, among others, and we know for a fact that FIFA takes a dim view of what they may regard to be political interference.
Yeah. All of the countries on the continent, I think there's a clear understanding of the role and the partnerships with government and the sovereignty of every nation, and football does not interfere with those sovereign matters of every country. The issues that relate to football, the governments do not interfere. So I would imagine what the Minister of Sports in South Africa, his communication with FIFA, would have been within those strict parameters. And if there are any issues, then I'm confident there'll be discussions to make sure that the parameters are respected.
Of course, a situation that arose out of a bit of a travesty, in the sense that the kind of mistake that was made that nearly cost us qualification.
You mean the mistake of the 3 points?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we nearly didn't qualify.
Yeah.
You know,
But-
so, and that, this issue we're talking about, the minister ends up writing to FIFA because the local body didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, you see, in my position, I may not express opinions on what member associations did or didn't do or should have done, particularly because some of these things at certain times come before judicial bodies, where there's a tribunal and there's an investigation, and I have to be found to have not expressed an opinion on these matters.
Let's go to the second part of our conversation. You may have seen, but you were not around this past week.
I'm always around.
Now, you would have seen, whether it's ad hoc committees in Parliament, whether it's Madlanga commissions, what we're talking about now around football, how everyone was tense, you know, watching that game against Rwanda, like all those things. And from where a lot of people sit, we saw both the South Africa we want, but also the South Africa we don't want, which often leads to a lot of anxieties among South Africans. I mean, as journalists, whether it's through our inviting people to come on our programs, or people phoning in on radio talk shows, or whether it's people writing letters to newspaper or magazine editors, people express their views about the country, and quite forcefully, especially nowadays. People are nervous about the future of our country.
Very important. I mean, we have big problems, and we've got some problems that are enormous. And but we must always remember where we come from. I remember when we grew up, the possibility of democracy, of one man, one vote, seemed impossible. We have overcome some of the most difficult, enormous challenges and problems. And we now live in a democracy, and there are new challenges and new problems. And what is critically important is we are, South Africans are ambitious people. We have great hopes and great desires and great objectives. And whereas there's a critical need to identify those failures and weaknesses, and there are many of them. Some of the biggest being just the corruption, the lack of maintenance of infrastructure, the fact that we've got such a high unemployment rate, and even those who've got work, they have difficulties in making ends meet. In the midst of all of these challenges, it's important that we give a positive message, that we encourage, motivate, inspire, because this country has got some of the most incredible, most talented, most caring, most loving people you can find anywhere in the world. And when we work together as we can really make this country one of the best countries in the world.
Is it even possible?
But let me add something else. It's and that's why, and I'll tell you why. That's why the Editors Forum, I don't know when last was I here, 5 years ago, asked me just like the question I was asked 20 years ago. You know, somebody sent me a clip. Tokyo was on 702, and they asked Tokyo on 702, what are your thoughts on the rumors that are going around that Patrice is going to get involved in politics? And I'd forgotten what I said 20 years ago, but Tokyo remembered. Tokyo remembers many things. and Tokyo says that, and I'd forgotten that, when they asked me this question, I was the president of Black Business. We just united Black and White Business. We formed BUSA. And they asked me, will you get into politics? And what I said at the time is, I'm not mad. And the issue was, are you saying that politics are for mad people? I said, I'm not mad. So Tokyo said on 702, I mean, I don't know where all these rumors come from, because 20 years ago, he said that he's not mad. And they asked Tokyo, was he right? Tokyo said, most probably he may have been right. But what I'm saying, and 5 years ago, the last time I had the honor of being with this important institution, the same question arose. Will you at some stage go into politics? And the answer I gave then is the same I gave a few weeks ago. I don't have to enter into politics to make the contribution I have to. All of us have an enormous obligations. I mean, this country has done so much, has given so much. I mean, I'm not talking about the last 20 years. I'm talking, the 5-year-old Patrice who left Pretoria, went to Elwell North in the Eastern Cape, spent 10 years at a Catholic mission school, had to wake up every morning to go to church. And I think that's partly why, religion is so important. But the point is, so many people, I mean, there are millions of people in this country who, in their own way, make this country a better place. And they are the people who give hope. But what I said to the 5 years ago when I was asked this question, when you get into politics, you start chasing votes. You have to. It's like when you play football, you've got to score goals. If you don't score goals, they replace you. And I know they ask the coach to go, but sometimes it's not the coach. So there has to be a clear understanding of that. What South Africa needs now, more than anything, is for all of us to come together and to work together and focus on those issues that keeps us together. And of course, there's my premier. I'm too conservative and too old-fashioned. I mean, I'll always be in Mandela's political party. Of course, we've worked with everybody. I've had an enormous honor of working with all political parties. We give money. We have, over the years, they don't need our money, but we made a donation to every single one of the political parties, because if people vote for a political party, it means they've got support. We've got to respect that. But the important issue is, focus on those issues that brings us together. And talking about Panyaza, a few months ago I said, you cannot develop football in South Africa without Kaizer Chiefs. I think you will agree with that.
I do.
You do. In similar vein, you know, whether we accept it or not, the African National Congress, the Workers' Organization, COSATU, the Secretary General of NUMSA phoned me a few weeks ago, and I said to him, you know, there's only one discussion between me and you. You must go back and join COSATU. The workers must unite. You can't have an ANC without a Communist Party. So the one thing that the older generation, Mandela, Sisulu, Oliver Tambo, Mbeki, got right, was to bring everybody. It was a church, and it continues to be a church. Have there been big problems within the ANC? Enormous. I mean, many of our people are so disappointed and enormously disappointed with a lot of justification. But I have no doubt in my mind that the ANC still has an enormous role to play. And what I do know as well, it's like policemen. There are some good policemen and there are some rogue policemen. And it's the policemen that are not so good, Panyaza, that makes the good ones, they give everybody a bad name. So those people who are part of these political parties, who behave in a manner that's irregular. But having said that, I'm enormously confident that we will all work together. And as I said, I know you told me you're going to ask me. I've answered your question, so you don't have to ask anything.
Well, not quite, because I actually have it on good record that more and more people from your political home have come to you than was ever the case before. Have you been telling them that you are not mad? Well, yet.
You know, sometimes it doesn't matter what you say, you know. Because I can tell you there are some good people in the ANC. Excellent people. Whoever the ANC chooses as their president, I'll support him. And we'll work together and make sure that the reason why this movement and this broad alliance, we have to keep that alliance together at all costs. It has an important role to play. And let me emphasize, of course I respect all other political parties. People vote for them and support them for specific reasons. And some of them, as I said, have become disillusioned. But the bottom line for me is we have to keep giving messages of hope, of positivity, of a brighter future. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, there are problems, but we have the capacity. We've shown it in the past. We have the capacity to overcome these problems, these challenges. It will not happen overnight. We cannot make promises we cannot keep. But, you know, I will continue in my own humble way through the Motsepe Foundation. Somebody was telling me the other day, we've educated 5,000 students, 4,000 of whom were at universities in the country. You know, those are the things that makes me happy. Because I think in all of us, there's a bit of godliness, you know. And you do things you hope to make other people happy, but in fact, when you see them happy, they make you even significantly more happy. So will we, you know, there are countries that have got bigger problems than we do, but they've got this optimism, this self-belief, this confidence that things will improve. And this is what, you know, I will do, my wife will do, We also teach our children. I always say to the chairman of Mamelodi Sundowns, remember that there's a Motsepe Foundation that's for everybody. And then, of course, there's your club where you can think about your club. But, you know, we have a broader duty. We've got an enormous obligation to try and give back, but also try and make this country a better place. We will never give up on the people of this country. Never.
Are you also saying never, not in a million years, will you do what many people are asking you to do, which is
to stay in CAF?
No,
I'm leaving CAF.
No, to be president of South Africa.
I've never liked people who say that we don't want a president who's got Kismadolo. I don't know whether people know what Kismadolo is. Kismadolo means who's got knock knees. Now, when I walk around and I look at my knees, they are knocked all the time. So that rules me out. And I've never liked people who I love people who say that South Africa does not need a rich man to be president. They are so correct. Absolutely correct. There are many people in this country who are incredible people, enormously talented, enormously committed. Let me say this to you. Let me start with Panyaza. Panyaza is Premier of Gauteng. That job is a calling. You've got to look at, if you're a mayor of a city or a town, you've got a duty to the people that you lead, but you also have a duty to the Almighty, because there are things that you may do that the people may not see. So make sure when you sleep at night, you are absolutely convinced that everything I'm doing is proper, it's fair, it's just, it's ethical. Being president of a country, it's sacrosanct. Sacrosanct. It's holy. Just like being premier is holy. That's correct, Panyaza. To be premier is holy. It's a calling. So these responsibilities are enormous responsibilities. And as I said, what you subject your family to, it's let me tell you, I love challenges, but I also know the sort of challenges I shouldn't waste my time with. I go to places and they say to me, you must become president of FIFA. I mean, I have no desire to be president of FIFA. I love Africa. That's why, the challenge in Africa excited me, because you need something that keeps you up at night, And when your wife sees you walking around at 3 o'clock in the morning, you say to her, I'm going to the toilet, but you're not going to it. You're thinking, where's this CEO, Or I find I send messages 3 o'clock in the morning, because sometimes I forget. So the work that the Motsepe Foundation does, it's enormously fulfilling. This country has got incredible people from whom we will choose the right leadership, including the right president, and I will, in my own humble way and my family, make a contribution. South Africa has got a bright future. Are there problems? Are there challenges? And we've got serious and big challenges. But I'm confident. It'll take time. And that's why coming to SANEF was so important to me, because we need, you guys have to criticize us where we fail and we do things that are wrong and things that are irregular. South Africa has never needed journalists that are well paid. We've got to pay them well. Well-paid journalists, well-paid editors. And the country has never needed a profession. Many years ago, I wanted to buy the Sunday Times in partnership with other people. And one of our partners when I shouldn't say what happened, but anyway.
But I mean, do you accept though that a lot of these people, or whatever they are raising, or the issues they are raising with you, and what they subsequently wanted to do, comes from a good space? They've seen you taking low-producing mines and built your fortune on the back of that. They've seen what you've done with Mamelodi Sundowns. They've seen what you have now done with CAF, and are saying, we've been disappointed by those who have come, who we have had up until now. So maybe we should try a different formula. And perhaps he's the one person who can, so to speak, take one for the nation.
Two things. You obviously haven't heard what Fikile Mbalula said about football and politics. And I agree with him. If football, I find in the Pirates, the Chiefs, the Sundowns, correct, he's my brother. All of them are my brothers. But whatever you do in life, it's got to be something that excites you, something that you are passionate about. And in my case, something that I'm absolutely convinced is going to take a hell of a lot of hard work, but I've got no doubt we will succeed. We will, and I've had many failures, and I'll have other failures in future, because there's nothing that builds you as much as to fail in life. Because every time you stumble and fall, you've got to wake up and stand and rise and keep going. And
okay, we've come to the end of the time that was allocated for this conversation. But I have to ask you this, though. Yes, we've spoken about where we come from. You've spoken about the hope we have to keep on giving, people. People have seen where you come from, and they have been inspired. To them, it says, black child especially, it is possible. Right? But the same people may also see you as part of the elite. And what I'm coming at is that you have opportunities that most South Africans don't have, where you get to sit like this or around the table with the people who have to, or who have given the right to run our lives. I don't know what they tell you about why they are not doing the things you are saying need to be done. From giving people water, ensuring that together with business, jobs are created. Only this past week, I think it was Business Day that was running the story about 1.8 trillion rands sitting in companies' bank accounts.
Very important.
And not being invested into the economy, struggling as this economy is. Now, when all of you are sitting there, what are the conversations?
Very good question.
And is everyone around the table actually alive to what will happen if we don't move or act now?
Absolutely important. A few weeks ago, at the results of African Rainbow Minerals, I made an announcement, because I thought you were going to go down that route as well, where people whom I respect enormously said to me, it mustn't look like you are turning your back against the country, because you've never turned your back against the country. And by you indicating that you are not going to get involved in politics, you are turning your back against South Africa. And one person was a little bit more forthright, say that it's almost like you are betraying, and that is not correct. I will never turn my back against the country. But going to this specific issue, you're asking such an important question. I have the privilege of sitting with some of the most important businessmen in the world, most successful. we are part of what's called the Giving Pledge that was started by Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, and these families that have committed to give half to the poor, because we believe in that, but also because we succeeded because other people helped us at different stages of our lives. But going back to these CEOs, and what you must understand, the most successful countries in the world have created jobs because of the private sector. But you've got to be careful as well. The private sector is profit motivated. The objective is profitability, which is correct. You need a developmental state. You will never be able to do the things for the poor. And there's lots of misrepresentations about electricity. I mean, you have to provide the cheapest, most affordable, most reliable electricity. And I said it, you should never privatize Eskom. Now, I can't say things against my political party, Panyaza, but you should never privatize Eskom. There are certain things you will never be able to deal with the poverty, with the unemployment, with the opportunities that South Africa requires without an efficient, properly employed. So I don't give you a job because you are my relative or my uncle, or you give jobs to the smartest and the brightest. Pay them well, zero tolerance of corruption, but this developmental state has a role to play. But it has to function side by side with the private sector. So these people, at one of the meetings I said, you cannot, the people who give donations to Africa, aid, okay, fine, we need it. But you will never build an economy based on donations and aid. It's never existed. You build an economy based on investment, competitiveness, jobs, skills, a bright future. But at the heart of that, you've got to create an environment. Let me give you an example. I'm in Silicon Valley. One of the top companies in the world wants to come and invest in South Africa. Top in the world. The CEO says to me, will my staff be safe? I said, what do you mean? Your country has got such a bad track record when it comes to crime and its inability to ensure that there's safety and people can walk around freely. Now, we have got a bad name in some respects, but that gets exaggerated. I mean, there's Jennifer from Bloomberg. I mean, we're lucky to have her in the country. So we walk around Johannesburg, it's safe. But people in other parts of the world who want to come and invest here have this perception based on what they hear and read that our country is not safe. And that's why I'm proud about what Panyaza is doing and various others. We need more visible policing. We've got to create a consistent track record that zero tolerance of crime, criminal syndicates, and the issues that make it unsafe and make our country unattractive for investment. We can earn billions of dollars. We can create millions of jobs through tourism. But again, people want to come to a country where they feel, forget about what I say, because this country is an exceptional country, but you've got to deal with the perception. So the trillions of dollars in conclusion that you talk about, that there is there. I mean, Africa has we've got sources of investments. We do. But some of the money goes offshore because it's also part of the asset management obligations. You've got to diversify risks. And why I mentioned these businessmen from all over the world is because they compete amongst themselves. But when it comes to being American, when it comes to being European, the patriotism, the commitment, the love is so deep that it's always, if my country needs me, I'll be there. And we've got similar business people in this country who feel this deep sense of duty, of patriotism, of love for the country and its people. But they manage other people's money, and they will only invest if they believe that they can make money. If they don't believe they'll make money, they'll do exactly what you said. Keep the money on the sideline. And we need jobs more than ever before. And that's why Panyaza and our government must consistently make them realize that this is the best place to invest and the best place to create value for shareholders. A long answer to a very short question.
I've overrun by 5 minutes, but we had agreed that we'll take 3 questions before we end the session.
Did we agree that we'll take 3 questions?
Yes.
Well,
that's what I was told.
Okay, I think we agree now. I'm used to being asked all sorts of questions.
So there's microphones, I think, on either side.
Voyo will answer the difficult questions, and I'll answer the easy ones.
Can I see some hands, please?
I think people are tired, they want to eat, you know.
Oh, well, in that case.
Oh, okay, there's a question there. Puleng, they'll give you the mic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Motsepe. I appreciate your assertion about the developmental state. My worry is that the South African education system is only able to take 1,200,000 students in the university system. And the TVET colleges have not been able to creating value proposition in industrialization. And with the advent of artificial intelligence and machine learning, if there are no investments in higher education, the developmental state you speak to will face multiple challenges. And therefore I'm wondering, how do we ensure that both public and private sector invest a lot more in the strengthening of universities? I'm very excited that our university has moved from being number 12 to number 6, but I'd like to be top 1. To do so, we need industry partnerships that are strong. So I'm just wondering what could be the ideas, the resourcing ideas, but also imagining the future.
I think brilliant question, eh? I go to Silicon Valley to learn artificial intelligence, generative AI, robotics, machine learning, and sometimes when I come out of these meetings, I'm more confused than I was before. But we have to invest enormously in technology, in artificial intelligence. I mean, African young students and young employees are as good and as smart as the best in the world, but they need opportunities. I mean, I went to Harvard. As I said, I was at Harvard yesterday, because there are times when it's important just to sit and listen and see where the world is going. Academic institutions are critically important. You know, one of the things that complicated the lives of the Motsepe families when Dr. Precious became Chancellor of UCT, because now we used to give money to all universities. Now UCT is number 1 on the list, but listening to what you said made me so proud. We've got to ensure that academic institutions, the best academic institutions in the world, have partnerships with the private sector. The Family Foundation has funded students from the African continent who study in China as part of the Schwarzman scholarships. And of course, we also fund students in the country, but also have funded students in countries outside. But education is critically important. Dr. Precious was this morning in Soweto at a school in Meadowlands, Six Panyaza. And lots of the young boys and girls came to it's a girls' school apparently. And unbeknown to her, the headmaster said to her, I just want to thank you because the Motsepe Foundation built a laboratory for the school. She didn't know that. And as if that wasn't enough, they said, we also want to thank you. Of course, she approved it, but she forgot. We also want to thank you for building a hostel for these young girls who stay at the school. So the biggest investment we can make is to make sure that our young boys and girls, to study in Soweto, must be as good as studying in these private schools. And I can just want to say in conclusion, you know, Vuyo, we've got about 300 or 400 students every year that goes to university. And then we see the results. And you are from Polokwane. One of the things that makes me so proud is you find many of our young students who go to the best private schools. And now they're at university, whether UCT or WITS or any other university, and they now have to compete with boys and girls who come from the most remote parts of the Eastern Cape, of Limpopo, of KwaZulu-Natal, and the other provinces. And the results that these boys and girls get from schools where there's no infrastructure, none, no library, no laboratory, often they get higher marks than young boys and girls from the top private schools. And you then want to find out, because I remember, I don't want to mention names, I said, we want to go and see what are the teachers doing in these remote areas. So I agree with you that the biggest investment we can make is quality education, invest in, we've got to teach our children the new jobs of the future, artificial intelligence, technology, AI, generative AI, and do partnerships with government so that there's funding for our youth in those areas. There's one more question, not two.
Who did you give the mic to?
It's Angela Quintal from the Committee to Protect Journalists.
The Committee to Protect?
Journalists.
Brilliant
Here
question.
tonight, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Motsepe, it's great to hear you. I heard you speak at a SANEF council meeting a few years back, and it made me think about how my organization, which is obviously there to protect journalists, how one could piggyback on CAF, given how important soccer is and football is not only to the continent, but to the world. And also in the light of the fact that FIFA itself has one of its strategic goals is human rights. And I'm wondering whether you would be open to having a discussion with me, with my organization, about a campaign where we do, as CAF and CPJ, look at ensuring that we are in a position to put human rights and press freedom and the citizens' right to access to information out there in a joint campaign. I know you're rushing off somewhere. I have sent Lux a message. I'm sorry I'm ambushing you here tonight, but this is my first opportunity, so I'd really like an opportunity, 5 minutes of your time, to try and convince you that this is a good idea.
You don't have to convince me.
Excellent.
You don't have to. Let me just. Brilliant question. You know, Vuyo, one of the leaders of the top opposition parties, big opposition parties, met with me a few weeks ago and said, it raised a lot of issues, but also said, it's difficult for you at times to do what you think is right, because this issue of journalists, I cannot sufficiently overemphasize it. But now if you get the Motsepe Foundation, you know, making huge donations, you've got to ask yourself, at times it's not what the facts are. I mean, we've got a proud, journalistic profession, and I mean, we've got some of the best journalists, not just in the continent, but I think we can hold them up against the best in the world. But it could raise questions that we are now forming partnerships with the journalists, and it might interfere with their independence. So we would love from the Motsepe Foundation. Many of the political parties that we give money, as I said, they don't need our money. But some of them, I say to them, if you stop criticizing me, I will not give you money. I think you know what I'm talking about. If you stop, go ahead, criticize. Because also they have to find a place for themselves under the sun. They've got to find something wrong. Otherwise, they might be perceived to be irrelevant or compromised. But I just want to say, we are enormously keen, because journalism is like the judiciary. It's like the judges. It's like the magistrates. You need a community that can, not just checks and balances, can criticize, ask questions, evaluate, make comments, and keep all of us on our toes in relation to whether what we are doing is in the best interest of the country. I think we are finished now, eh?
No, one more.
A fire chat without the fire, but that's how it comes to the end. Oh,
there's one more question. Okay.
Thank you very much. As the self-proclaimed youth leader of SANEF, I speak on behalf of young Africans and young people in the media, the youth voices. I wanted to ask a question for my TikTok generation, Mr. Motsepe.
Sorry, for your future generation.
No, for the young. I'm the youth in the room. To say, if you could just break it down, what gives you hope about South Africa and what makes you utterly disappointed in South Africa?
You give me hope about South Africa. I mean, this country has got, and let me make a confession. When you travel in many of these countries, there are countries that they don't even have 5% of our GDP, but you drive for miles and miles and miles, no pothole. And every time I go to the airport, I've got to apply brakes, because I've had so many of my tires, because of potholes. So there's a sense of jealousy, you say, but we can do better because we have the resources and the people to do better. Let's say we're in a football match. It's halftime. And my team is losing 15-0. It's soccer, not rugby. And at halftime, I'm the coach. I'm saying, guys, we're going to win here. We're going to win. And they say to me, are you aware it's 15-0, it's halftime? We must probably get another 15 in the second half. So we are in this football match where for many, many reasons it's halftime and we are behind. High unemployment rate, big problems concerning criminality. You spoke about what you see on TV in Parliament and all of those issues that are arising there. The lack of confidence, the lack of enthusiasm among so many of our people, it's a matter of concern. And there's so much, Panyaza, that the governments have done over the years. Help with water, housing, electricity has gone up, but it must come down again. When last did you hear? We should never have had blackouts, load shedding. But there are other countries in the world that also have problems and challenges. And what we have to do, she was asking what gives you confidence. What gives me confidence is this enthusiasm, the optimism, the never say die, but never give up attitude that's amongst our people. And we should be careful that we shouldn't put too much emphasis on the government, on the president. There's so much we can do that has very little, if anything, to do with the government and with the political leadership. So, as I said, we will do, and at times don't wait for others. Don't wait for others to start things, and when they do it, you then follow. Just get going. And this is this important question. I'm enormously privileged that, I speak to Isilo Samabandla, Amakumkanu wethu base Eastern Cape. I mean, all of the traditional leaders. I go to, we have the privilege of working with these religious organizations enormously. I go to the mosque in Cape Town. I go to the synagogue. I go to, whenever I've got a chance, I go to church. I have to. I need, you know what they say in the Bible about rich people and the camel, eh? It's more difficult. It's more difficult for the rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to go through the head of the needle. Now, that's a big thing, eh? Big thing. So I go to Morea, and you sit there, and you see hundreds of thousands of people, and the inspiration that the church, that the religion gives to all of our. I mean, I'm a Wesel, a Methodist church, Anglican, Catholic. Those people give us confidence, enormous confidence. People with integrity, people who believe that, I am my brother's keeper and I'm my sister's keeper as well. So, thank you so much. The future looks bright. Thank you.